Welcome everyone to the Racist War on Everything. We are coming to you only a day late with fewer pages in the prep on this Friday evening in Perth. Fenian is here and Nolsey is here. How are you, Nolsey?
Oh, pretty well good.
Just realised I kind of referred to myself in the third person there. Well, I'm really hoping that today is the last scorching day we get.
Oh, God.
That being 39 degrees. And I hope it's
I was outside
one.
working on my pool today, and I was just like fucking melting.
Yeah, so that's why I say I really, really hope it is the last one. All right, guys. So on what looks like will be a shorter episode for you, we'll kick it off talking about defence. And I'm not sure if we've ever started an episode talking about the ADF before. Nonetheless, this was probably the only kind of story that I saw kind of dominating headlines for a day or so across the networks, across the platforms. So what is all this about? So our Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister is Richard Marles. It's like you don't see that much of Richard Marles in the news, but there was actually a reason this week. So this is about an increase, or not an increase, more it's just they're giving us the numbers on how they're distributing funds to the ADF over the next 10 years, I believe it is. So this is, 10 years. So they're investing $1.7 billion in defence over 4 years and $11.1 billion over 10. And the biggest part of this is we're going to be adding 11 frigates to our navy. So don't
Which is going to make dick all of a difference.
You reckon it's not going to make a difference at all?
No, I mean,
look, we don't have the exact details, but I know that they do say, much like with the submarines, that a number of them are supposed to be manufactured onshore in Australia. And when I watched 730's coverage of this, they said mainly Adelaide and Perth, actually, are supposed to be the places. Well, Western Australia and South Australia, I should say.
It's going to be up north.
You reckon?
Yeah, there's no point. The only reason why we're fortifying like our navy is to quote unquote be a bulwark against China and etc. And some like fucking around that's going on in Malaysia and Indonesia right now. And a frigate is quite literally just a patrol vessel.
Well, it sounds like we need those at the moment, considering the people who are slipping in right now. But yeah, that was the official kind of reason was Labor needed to come up with an official sort of response to the rise of China, particularly in the Asia Pacific, and all those coconut nations who they keep trying to bribe all the time. And it's funny, like when you look at you know how when UN resolutions are passed against Israel, like basically it's the entire world who condemns Israel, and then America and Australia sometimes on the other side. Yeah, and then it's a whole bunch of like pissant countries that no one cares about, like Tonga, Tuvalu, Fiji. The reason why that always happens is because America and Israel bribe those countries to vote with them on those, like against those UN resolutions. It's the same thing when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to which army you want to pledge allegiance to. As we know, the Solomon Islands has sort of gone more in the direction of China in the past year or so. And, we keep throwing money at places like Tuvalu and Fiji to keep them on board. So that's part of the Asia-Pacific strategy. But, yeah, I guess we sometimes also forget that Australia does have a navy, an air force, an army.
I know you can boil most conflicts down to this, but, like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is the most blatant display of literally this entire conflict is being done over money that I've ever seen in a history book, or at least in like reasonably contemporary times.
Yeah, yeah. So look, I'll just go through. This is what it is supposed to look like in 10 years' time, because this is a 10-year plan here. So we're supposed to have 6 Hunter class frigates, 3 air warfare destroyers, 6 large optionally crewed surface vessels. So I assume they're talking about drone-like technology there.
Yeah.
11 general purpose frigates, and the Navy will have 6 Anzac class frigates as well. And also 25 minor war vessels that will contribute to civil maritime security operations. So I guess that's sort of like non-combat operations.
So scout with standard armament, scout with anti-air armament, and a patrol vessel.
Okay, and that's really it.
Yep. These are very small ships.
All right. I mean, it all looked very grandiose when I saw this on 7:30 the other night. But in response, the opposition defence spokesman was Andrew Hastie, himself a veteran. He's saying that actually this current plan means that we won't see an extra ship in the Navy until 2031, if you go by kind of the estimates that are going on right now.
Yeah.
And in terms of, how, if we are going to manufacture them here, that does, to manufacture a frigate, that takes a hell of a long time. You're talking a few years here. So unless we actually just buy them outright, yeah, we're not going to see one until 2031. And basically the opposition is saying, well, that's not good enough. We need to see big spends on defense right now. It's that one area where the coalition is like, we need to actually increase government funding.
If we get more on this story, I could bring on a shipwright that works within this country. But, even from the small conversations I've had with this guy, that our capability to even make commercial vessels is limited to non-existent, let alone a military vessel.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we've probably got a better chance of, getting frigates completed than we do nuclear-powered submarines.
Oh, yeah.
That's definitely true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe we could pull it off, but yeah, there's going to be a huge delay, to say the least. Yeah. Oh, and that's right. The other thing that Labor was said to have kind of uncovered with this is after, like a sweeping review, as they put it, of our defense capabilities. And that was, there was a $20 billion black hole in the coalition's funding. That is, if you look at projects that the Liberals had planned, about 20 billion of that was unfunded. So they had not crunched the numbers properly, and Labor is saying that they have to make good on that now and provide that funding. So yeah, they're still taking a swipe at the previous government as a result. But in terms of how this actually affects the average voter, I got to say that, military spurgs and that, I'm sure they look at this and they're very interested in it. But what percentage of the Australian public is actually a military spurg? Basically nothing.
No.
The only way you're able to really kind of gauge this with the public, that is, kind of find out what exactly the public thinks about how government is performing on defence, is whether or not they feel safe. And I think for the most part, we feel safe from foreign invaders. And when I say that, I mean that in the very literal sense of the term, where
state acting combatants.
Yeah, but we
got a different kind.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just say we do not feel safe regarding the other kind of foreign invasion, and that is civilians coming in from every fucking corner of the world. As we know, crime levels in Queensland. It's probably the thing most on voters' minds at the moment. So yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think this is going to be an issue, really. It's not going to certainly not going to decide an election one way or the other. And people would just much rather feel safe from some violent Sudanese teenager who skipped bail, robbing their house and then stabbing their wife in the chest. That's what they're.
Well, yeah. I mean, we all saw, the recent fucking stories about the home invasions. We covered that grandma getting stabbed, etc. And we were told explicitly by the police in both cases, and even by media reporting that, like, hey, look, we told you this because it was egregious. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There's a lot of other shit we're not telling you about.
Right. Yeah. So, we're going to get into that stuff later, so I won't go through it in too much detail.
Yeah.
But that was just my kind of long version of saying, okay, even though there was a lot of news coverage on this, and it did result in quite a heavy response, let's say, from the coalition. Ultimately, I don't think the electorate really cares about it that much, to be frank.
Yeah, and again, like the biggest military threat in our sector or like in our region is just China, and we've got a very, very simple relationship with them, which is they want industrial materials or base materials. We want industrial goods. They want food exports, and to a degree, and depending on who you ask, we want investment in the agricultural industry, and they also want legitimizing degrees over here. Now, say that you do or do not like those things. That's the simple relationship we have with them. Could that be changed in a different government under a different rationale and regime? Probably. But as it currently stands, the only reason why we'll be antagonistic to them, at least viewing it from the state of Australia, is because of American impotence to be so. There's generally no other reason.
Right. And I mean, we already have AUKUS, which is, America leading Australian geopolitics in our region, which is the whole reason we screwed the French over. It was because the Americans told us to. Okay. I mean,
it's the reason why we're piling money on fucking these goddamn like Solomon Archipelago islands to not sign over deals with the Chinese. There's a reason why we're footing the bill to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're constantly just battling over who supports who in that area. And, I mean, we had already inked the deal, remember, with the French. They had already started production.
Retrofitting.
They
had retrofitted their dry docks to literally mount a diesel harness into a submarine because they just didn't do that anymore because no one's done that since like the fucking Korean War.
And Sky News were just saying that the French were a bunch of crybabies over that. What are you talking about? They had fucking inked a deal that they were already making good on. They had every reason to be pissed off about that. Because we are America's bitch at the end of the day, and we will always follow them. Okay.
Sad to say, but true.
So let's talk a little bit about the refugee crisis that's going on right now. I don't think it's a crisis. It turns out the last count I think we gave here, like on the last show, was 24 people. Apparently that has gone up to 35 now. And one of the reasons for that is because some of those people were hiding. So it looks like they're exclusively from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. And remember, Pakistan and Bangladesh used to be part of India. They just separated because they're Muslim, and which just goes to show multiculturalism doesn't work anywhere. And now they're having those fights.
No. That's the fault of the British. It was entirely the British fault, and I've got this really nebulous story that I can weave. And if I show you sad images of like British officers doing quirky things with the locals there, that makes it true.
Of course. So, yeah, look, what was funny about this was when they landed, it was in Beagle Bay, where it's 90% Aboriginal.
Yeah.
So you had like all these like overexcited Aborigines seeing like these rickety ships turn up on their shore. They're like, oh, look at this. They didn't know what the hell was going on. Maybe they thought it was like another First Fleet or something that was headed in. But look,
Oh, look, it's my cousin.
yes, yeah. If you want to talk about that in a genealogical kind of
Yeah.
way, but yeah, look, what they're saying is that what's going on with these people turning up is they've actually been given instructions from, like people smugglers and other people who might have made the voyage themselves, to do things like actually hide in the bushes, so that they're giving them advice on what to do when you land so that you don't get caught. And yeah, as we saw here, we did actually have, it looks like about 11 of them who weren't detected initially. So this is what like Peter Dutton is bringing up to say, that like Labor has lost control of our borders, as a result of all of these new plans that we're uncovering. And if they really had control of the borders, then, they wouldn't be spreading around advice like that, because,
No.
you're always just going to get caught anyway, so you might as well not actually make the journey. Look, I don't know about that. I mean, we still did have these kind of arrivals happen under other governments, and it was pointed out, quite rightly so, by Labor, that when Peter Dutton was Home Affairs Minister and had powers of immigration, plane arrivals actually went up under his watch. That is, of illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants actually went up. Just about, well, not just about, every single immigration minister or Home Affairs Minister has seen a rise in immigration, just net immigration of legal and illegal. But yeah, he saw it actually increase in illegal immigration. So he's not exactly one to talk. And I think it's just, whenever these boats turn up, it's a public spectacle. I was just talking about how excited those Aborigines were. And that's what generates the headlines. It's not exactly a big spectacle when a bunch of illegal people who are on a commercial flight simply disembark and mix into the population. It's not exactly something that grabs the headlines. And it's not something you can film, really, either, to point out as like a big event. So, yeah, we still have this sort of fixation on boats turning up. Now, do I want these 35 people here? Of course I don't. But 35, Indians, they're all basically the same race of people, is absolutely fuck all. What about the legal rate of Indians that are entering this country? Probably 35 of them arrived before I've finished a sentence, for Christ's sake. So
Yeah, again, go to Perth Airport and look at the fucking Heathrow line. They go into London and then they fly out to here.
And maybe I'm being hypocritical by starting off this conversation on immigration by talking about these refugees. But what I hate about this is that, like, boat people is always sort of given as the example of the worst thing that could possibly happen immigration-wise. A bunch of illegal refugees turning up on your shore in a boat. I actually really don't give much of a fuck about it. I really don't.
No, the worst thing that can happen in terms of illegal immigration is that aftermath scene that one air hostess took on that plane that left from like fucking like Bangladesh airport and landed in Heathrow, and there was literally shit in the aisles. Because don't worry, that shit gets trudged here just as easily.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been an increase of like shit found at airports because of like, not only because of people getting off the planes, but Uber drivers. And the Ubers are being driven by Indians.
They were banned from Perth Airport. We covered this, like a few years ago now.
Yeah, that's probably what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, they were literally banned from Perth Airport because they kept shitting in the airport. They kept going to the fucking pedestrian pickup and then shitting where they'll pick up the pedestrians.
Right.
And by the way, those people were here legally as well.
These people were probably just shitting into the ocean, I would say. So anyway, they've been whisked away. But, I mean, just look out for more of this. Even though we've got the cost of living crisis going on right now, Peter Dutton will only just kind of tangentially mention the fact that immigration levels are contributing to the housing crisis, the high rate of inflation and everything. He would much rather talk about this instead and say that this and this alone is a reason for Andrew Giles to resign as immigration minister. I don't give a shit. I don't care for Andrew Giles, but if he was replaced by someone else, he'd be replaced by someone just as bad. So, yeah, I really don't care.
It makes no fucking difference.
Right. Okay. Okay, so yeah, look, just not quite finished on that yet. So the Border Force is saying that apparently these people smugglers are investing in faster and more modern boats. I'm not exactly sure what these guys turned up on, but yeah, I guess it wasn't like the usual kind of thing where they're like plugging holes.
Ex-fisherman boat.
Yeah, or if we remember from the children overboard scandal that happened back in the Howard years, which by the way was basically true. They were throwing their children into the water as a way of like kind of attracting attention. But yeah, back then you did notice they were on really shitty boats. And yes, we like during the Rudd years, you actually had a number of drownings that I think was in.
Well, there's that one fucking Vietnamese, and they use them as like, oh, the illegal migrant success story. And you're saying like, oh, I was just a kid and I was with my family, and we had this like fucking like boat, and the boat like the engine like shit the bed like halfway through the trip, and we were stranded, and it was only because of like all the generosity of Australia that they took us in, and that's why I'm proud to be an Australian. And it's just like, that's not even the full story, because you were also a children thrown off the side of the boat story as well. You just didn't fucking include that.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, the Greens forever were going on about how this was an invention of the Howard government. Some of them had not been thrown overboard. That is actually true, but some of them had. And if you ask me, like, the Howard government never properly rebutted that. They just kind of let the Greens steal the narrative on that whole thing. At the end of the day, again, though, it's like I don't care. Like, and I still don't care much about like the Tampa either, which was a whole bunch of Afghanis. I think they came over on a Norwegian vessel because, again, I don't even think there was like even 100 of them on there. It was just simply the fact that they were on a boat and they would have been illegal. I don't give a fuck because it's just such a drop in the ocean. I don't care about it. I will gladly take every fucking illegal boat that, we've turned back if it could just mean a reverse in the current levels of legal immigration. Because I tell you what, we would look a hell of a lot lighter. Our complexion would look a lot lighter if that was the case. So, like, in a way, I just kind of look at it and say, is this just a case of controlled opposition? Like when I say opposition, I mean the debate on immigration overall. And we get told that Peter Dutton is some evil, bald neo-Nazi who hates brown people, and the reason why is simply because he doesn't want boats turning up. But he's completely okay with inking a free trade agreement with India that makes them our number one source of immigration in the world. And it's just like, then we just have a fake debate on it because we don't actually debate on the issues that matter. All we do is talk about these fucking boats.
Yeah, well, I think we all unfortunately know the answer to that at this point.
Right. So look, Albo is saying, of course, no. They have not lost control of the borders. He's saying that Operation Sovereign Borders, which was something implemented by Tony Abbott back in 2013, I believe, he's saying that is still official government policy. That surveillance hours. So recent figures show surveillance hours have fallen, but the ADF says it still has sufficient coverage of Australia's borders. So I guess, you've got like one piece of data that does lend itself to Peter Dutton's claims here that we are not actually surveilling our shores as much as what we used to.
I was going to say, like, who gave these guys the retro playbook? Like,
I don't know. But look, here's an interesting talking point here. Part of Albo's response to all of this has also been that simply the opposition saying that the government has lost control of the borders is encouraging people smuggling, because by getting in the media cycle like that, you put out a message that Australia has indeed lost control of its borders, and therefore, if you are to try and attempt to get to our shores via boat, you've actually got a better chance now than what you did before. So, in that way, he's saying that Peter Dutton is actually to blame because he's putting that message out to people smugglers.
well, yeah, I mean, it is free marketing material, to be honest.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I can see the logic in it. I can see the logic in it. But then again, you have to wonder, why did Peter Dutton actually make those comments in the first place? We're not really sure if this is a coincidence or if, it perhaps is to do with less surveillance being carried out by the border force. It could be true. I mean, I do know that just like every sort of essential service in Australia, we are struggling to find recruits. Like we struggle to take on new prison officers, youth justice officers, police, military.
They're whining about
the
recruitment for the ADF, and yeah, obviously we've covered
that's what I mean. Yeah, the Australian Border Force, they've got a huge public campaign at the moment to recruit people. I'm seeing the advertising in a lot of places. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it's simply a staffing issue. It's like it's got nothing to do with Labor actually taking a soft approach. It's just simply they don't have the staff, and no one wants to join. Why would you?
Again, like whose nation is this? It's not yours. It's no one's really.
I mean, people don't feel a commitment. Like, if you're going to join the border force, you're going to do it simply for whatever money it is that they're offering you, and that's about it. I mean,
you are a mercenary.
Yeah, right. I mean, people would join, the police and the army and the navy, etc., beforehand, not simply to have a steady job and to have a steady paycheck, but also out of a sense of duty, because you felt a connection. You felt that this was actually an institution that protects a country that you love. You're not going to get that if you don't live in a country, if you simply live in an economic zone. You're going to be motivated purely by how much money they're offering you, and that's it.
I know I'm leaning into memes here, but there was a discussion on Twitter, and yes, fucking Jesus Christ, Twitter, where people were fighting over the interpretation of Starship Troopers by Heinlein. Oh, so the movie by Paul Verhoeven. And one of the things was like, oh yeah, look, communists identifying with literal hive mind insects. Okay, that's fun, that's funny, etc. But there was another crowd in there that legitimately did not understand why there was any form of patriotism. And then, you look at their self-prescribed birth dates on Twitter, and it's all 2004 and etc. And then you start to feel old. But we're dealing with a large section of the population that either hates it for going through the conflicts in the late 90s to early aughts in the Western world, or has no conception of it. And that's because there's nothing to be proud of here.
And that's it. And can I go on the record of saying I hate the Starship Troopers movie? Some people tell me that the book is good, but the movie is shit, I'm sorry. Mainly because it's just got crap acting in it.
I
rewatched it a few years ago, and I was just laughing at how bad some of the acting was. But anyway, if you read, Machiavelli's famous book, The Prince, he's got a chapter in there about how a leader should never ever rely on an army of mercenaries, because they they don't have the passion. They're not willing to actually die for anything because all they're doing is just doing it for money. They're just getting paid. Uh, you know, how could a mercenary carry out the kind of thing that, say, kamikaze Japanese pilots did at the end of World War II? They kill themselves, yes, out of fanaticism and loyalty. Mercenaries not going to do that at all. Okay,
No, mercenaries
they
going
don't
to tell
believe
you
it.
to fuck off.
Yeah, and that effectively is what we've got now. It's not official, but our army essentially is just a collection of people on contracts. That's all it is.
Yep, that's it. You're all
All right.
mercenaries for the gay disco.
Okay, so we will talk about the crime issue again here. So, um, over in Queensland, their police commissioner is stepping down. Her 5-year contract is set to end this July, and she's saying that she will not sign a new one. So, her name is Katarina Carroll. She is not all that well known outside of Queensland. Not surprisingly, this is a state issue that's going on. It's only kind of making national headlines because, well, the whole youth crime issue has been making national headlines, as it should, in Queensland. So, she was under pressure not just because of the recent stabbing murder that happened by that piece of Sudanese scum. It's just been a general uptick in crime, and particularly youth crime. And yeah, you look through this ABC article I was reading through about Katarina here, and there's no mention about this increase in youth crime being largely racial. In other words, it's not an increase in white youth crime. It's mainly Aboriginal, Sudanese, and Islander youth crime, if you want to get specific about it. It's those three.
Oh, don't worry. Like, they can always use these nice words to get around mentioning that fact. Have you seen the American articles when they talked about the black teenager who was described as a romantic musician in training who hijacked a taxi cab?
Did he understand the meaning of
gunpoint? Yeah, I saw that clip too. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. Oh, sorry to cut you off. Yeah. Sorry, say that again.
No, they described him as a romantic musician in training because he hijacked a taxi at gunpoint and used the taxi to pick up his date for Valentine's Day, and obviously got caught.
Oh, that's the most romantic story I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So Albo popped the question on Valentine's Day, and this guy goes and literally steals his ride. Oh, I shouldn't laugh. I mean,
it's fucking terrible, but yeah,
it gets to clown level, where your reaction is to actually laugh at it. But yeah, I mean, we shouldn't lose sight of just how fucking serious it is. I mean, we're talking about elderly women having their lives taken as a result of this. And look, this resignation here by the police commissioner, it's like, I do and I don't support it. It's just like, I don't care. Who's a replacement going to be? And at the end of the day here, this
someone
is much
equally
more
as gay and just not as burnt out.
Yeah, I mean, this is much more the failure of government here. And, I'd go further and say, look, it's not even really how you're tackling crime in Queensland. You need to look at this at the federal level and just say, this is an issue of immigration and the people that you're letting into the country. Now, Aborigines are already here, of course. So that, I think, you can confine to being specifically a state issue. And that is, we need to get much tougher on the crime that they produce. But we could be stopping Sudanese and Islander youth from flooding Queensland and other parts of Australia. And we simply don't. So, do I really care that we've seen the back of this unpopular police commissioner? Not really. Because she's going to be replaced by the same. It's just going to be garbage in, garbage out.
Well, it's one of the things I've seen also on Twitter with some of the proud fighters of the remnants of Dingo Twitter actually engaging with people in arguments. about this youth crime thing, the argument that they get back was, well, there's white kids in this country and they do crime too, blah blah blah. So why is it such a big difference for you when it's these kids and etc. And the answer is because this entire situation is completely avoidable. And I've seen some of them actually make that argument very well, and normally they just get blocked. But basically, when you're talking about crime that is born of your people, you're talking about lawfare. You're actually talking about, okay, like, how do we fix this? This is a problem within our people. This is a problem that has to be dealt with by ourselves. Versus, okay, no, this is a foreign element. Now this is outside of the tribe. This is warfare.
Yeah, and I mean, I made the point before that this is where we need to stop, like, conservatives need to stop talking about how this is simply a cultural issue, because that allows the left to then say, okay, well, that must mean that Queensland institutions are the ones responsible for producing this crime, because these kids are Australian, apparently. They were born here, they went through Australian schools and other institutions, and therefore the fact that they came out the other end as criminals means that it's actually Australia's fault as a result. That's where the conservative argument actually logically leads in the end.
The exact same thing that Sudanese dude said during those protests where Blair was attending and the speakers got punched out.
Which ones were that?
The one where the guy rolled through with a big ute with heavy duty speakers saying Sudanese are welcome, racists are not, and then the crowd just swarmed them and punched out the fucking diaphragms of the speakers. Remember that one?
I don't think I do, no.
But yeah, no, that Sudanese leader came out and said, hey, look, these are Australian kids, therefore it's Australia's problem.
They do it every time. Oh, and of course, you can't forget the other one. It's to do with racism. We were simply just racist to them, and therefore that made them act out.
Yeah, if they are selected against in any way that is, directly, basically categorically non-institutional and non-cultural, or representing a culture that is quote unquote not Sudanese, i.e. imported black culture from the US, which, trust me, you can see over here too with blacks.
Of course.
Yeah, no, then they just play racism. That's it.
If anything, man, we've got the worst ones, because we've got Sudanese who are the ones who chop each other up with machetes on a daily basis. And, there's definitely not going to be much white admixture in the Africans that we get. They're all fresh off the boat. In America, the ones who descend from the slavery days, I think on average, they've got something like 15 to 20% white admixture in their blood.
Yeah.
Ours are just pure Negro, and they are just savages.
And I was going to say, to anyone who would challenge me on this, anyone who would say that I'm wrong, go to the deepest, darkest of Africa, go to the armpit of Africa, or go to the Ivory Coast, and don't stay at a resort. Do an actual volunteer thing where they're not parading you around. See how much security they need to bring with you, and then maybe, if you're not being put on a guide by wire, ask one of the locals what actually goes on there. When I was in Cameroon, I heard the most depraved stories of murder, rape, and cannibalism that I'll ever hear in my entire life. And I guarantee you that.
Actually, you know what I watched the other day? I was watching on my second monitor Radical Agenda, Christopher Canwell. And he was going on about Black History Month, of course, because it's still Black History Month, isn't it? It's February.
Still February,
Extreme trigger warning, but he was showing clips of recent black on white violence in America. And wow, man, it's hard to describe some of this stuff. There was one clip actually where this black just went and kicked a cat like it was a football. And all the other blacks around just started laughing as soon as it happened. They thought it was hilarious. Okay.
Yeah, they think gratuitous violence is funny. They find that funny, and that's one of the most disturbing parts of the video.
Someone who does something like that and thinks that is funny is somehow simply just part of the human race, like me. Okay, no, that person is inherently different and in a bad fucking way, and I don't want them where I live. And why is that so much to ask for? Why is it that I shouldn't be angry that that is being forced on me and forced on other people? So look, to also just talk about further who we need to apportion blame to. Story here from the Australian found that Queensland magistrates, so like the judges, have granted bail to young offenders against the request of police officers in about 2/3 of all cases in the past 18 months. Okay, so here we actually have genuine good advice, believe it or not, coming from Queensland police saying this particular offender, no, they're too dangerous, don't let them out, don't give them bail. 2/3 of them have had that advice gone against by the magistrates, who, as we know, are usually disconnected, lily pad lefties who just, again, think it's to do with institutions and racism and everything like that. And if you just give them a chance, they'll be fine. But no,
It's much easier to believe that.
They end up skipping bail, as this kid who stabbed Verlene White was. He skipped bail. So did the Aboriginal kid who stabbed that other Queensland woman last year in the chest and killed her. He was skipping bail as well. So these magistrates absolutely have blood on their hands. And despite all of this, the best thing we got from Stephen Miles, the new Queensland Premier, was, he's going to let cameras into courtrooms. That was it. That was like the only major change he announced, was that when it comes to these like court hearings of these juveniles, they're going to let the media watch. That was it. He basically laughed off suggestions that they were going to scrap detention as a last resort as a policy. So at least the Queensland Liberals are saying no, they are going to scrap that, and they're basically going to reverse all of the 2016 reforms that Labor implemented. But again, you're not going to actually bring any of this, any serious reform, until you address the racial issue, which no one wants to do. Okay, just a quick story here. I just found this interesting, this article I read in the ABC. Apparently, a lot of the methamphetamine that enters Australia through the Torres Strait Islands and into Queensland actually comes from Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea has actually been in the news a lot lately because of that enormous riot that took place where they were just looting and plundering the capital because they found out the police had gone on strike for a few hours. But also, there was one of the biggest massacres they've had in recent history, where one tribe ambushed a rival tribe and then proceeded to kill 24 of them. Well, it also turns out that a lot of these tribes are basically just drug gangs. And the drug of choice seems to be methamphetamine. And when you look at the rising rates of methamphetamine in Torres Strait Islander communities, our other indigenous inhabitants, it's pretty much all coming from Papua New Guinea. And they're like, you were saying that like Aborigines are sort of like distant relatives of Indians, whereas Torres Strait Islanders are, more connected to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, Papua New Guineans and Polynesians, yeah.
Polynesian,
yeah, basically they had boats, and yeah, they just started. They were fucking each other for millennia. So yeah, that's why when you actually deal with Torres Strait Islanders, they're kind of put together, but they're still like, oh, like you're basically like a really fucked up Indonesian, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess they're just sort of like a browner, dumber version in a way.
Yeah,
but they're still preferable to Aborigines, I'd say.
Yeah, to the mainlanders, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting that a lot of... because, I mean, how much money do we pour into Papua New Guinea trying to reduce these levels of tribal violence that they're going through, stabilize Port Moresby in some sense? We built their internet infrastructure. Pretty much all of it we built. The NBN, anyway, was an entirely government, Australian government project that was run there. And we really don't get anything much out of this
14
relationship except for methamphetamine.
Yeah, 14 billion annual.
In terms of aid that we give them.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, remember, Papua New Guinea used to be a colony of Australia. We owned them at one point. And you know what? It may well have been like more economical for us to have simply held on. Like, I have heard that,
Maybe.
like, some of the reasons why, they, like, we let go of Papua New Guinea was because they were like an economic drain, but they are still an economic drain, an extremely bad economic drain.
Hell, we don't even get to tax them.
No.
Not that we actually really ever fucking tax them.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to climate and energy. So the federal government's official advice on diets. Now, this can obviously just be found online if you go to the websites of various government departments. They'll provide you with this information. But it's going to now, when it comes to the advice on food, different kinds of food and, what it offers you and what are the risks or the, let's say, the benefits and also the threats that it may give you. The government is now going to include the impact on climate change when they give that advice. So,
oh God,
this farmers are saying is basically an ideological war on red meat. They always go in against beef, and this is really to do with cow farts. They say that other meat products like chicken do not contribute to a carbon footprint as much, I guess because cow farts are worse than chicken farts, basically. I'm putting this in a very crude way. Because it's honestly is what the debate is about.
Okay, so by the way, and I'm going to reiterate this, and I've said this before. It needs to be said again. If someone actually brings that up to you, ask them how UV stable is methane, because that's the gas that they're talking about when they're talking about cow farts. Because cow farts they're full of fucking methane.
Yeah.
Same with any mammal or basically any digesting creature that doesn't use solely enzymes.
Whenever you break wind, you are releasing methane.
Yes. Now, cows do it a lot. Now, one of the things is methane actually is able to travel to the level above the troposphere where it can be exposed to UV radiation, where it is broken down into water and CO2, because methane is not UV stable.
Okay.
It makes no fucking difference. It makes no fucking difference.
So it's neutralized once it rises high enough, basically.
Yes, and it does. Either it does or it gets absorbed into basically non-organic greases and oils emitted by the say grass or wildlife around it, and then it just gets combined into larger string alkalines. Alkanes, sorry, not alkalines, alkanes. But yeah, no, it's literally a non-fucking issue. They just say oh god, methane in its current state reflects so much infrared light, and it's just well, yeah, but in actual process and actual atmospheric conditions, it just gets ripped apart into stuff that doesn't do it as much.
Okay, well, look, this isn't stopping them from doing it, and whenever you watch those
hey, trust the science.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously they would just prefer people not eating meat altogether, but yes. they really, really hate beef in particular. It's always the products that we get from cows, and they would rather you, eat a chicken or a duck or whatever the hell it is. But there's also calls now for those, so they're called the Australian Dietary Guidelines, to actually be printed on the packages as well. So, you'll get warned about how nutritious your slab of rump steak or whatever it is that you're buying, but you'll also be told about your carbon footprint and other impacts on the environment in an attempt to guilt trip you into not buying that product. Would that surprise me if they did that? Absolutely not. But yeah, that's about to be
No,
rolled
it
out
wouldn't.
online anyway. At the very least, they're going to change the online guidelines.
And if you see a person considering that information, genuinely considering that information, genuinely consider not talking to that person ever again.
Yeah, Defu. Okay, so the ghost of the failed home insulation scheme is perhaps
Mm.
coming back to haunt Labour a little bit here. So this was
That was
back when,
Rod's. Was it Rod's
yeah,
or Gillard's?
yeah, it was Rudd. It was Rudd. So this was back when the global financial crisis hit, and then of course, government has to announce deficit spending as a way of stimulating the economy. And part of how they did that was this like pink bats program, like to install insulation in people's houses, and that resulted in obviously like a lot of tradespeople needing to do these installations, and some of them were not trained properly because they were just kind of trying to roll it out very quickly, and that resulted in 4 deaths, and I believe they were all like pretty young guys as well, like late teens, early 20s or so. And that is what led to the end of Peter Garrett's tenure as environment minister, even though he was hailed to be sort of like the god emperor of the environment at one point, and then he oversaw that failed scheme. Um, but anyway, what we have going on now is the rollout of solar. So we have, again, as we keep hearing, we do have a skills shortage. Now, in this case, yeah, that there is. And, this is not to do with immigration levels being too low or whatever. It's to do with a lot of other factors that I won't go into now. But the ETU, the Electrical Trades Union, is saying that they've already seen a huge amount of unqualified workers working in the solar industry. A lot of them are backpackers, many of whom, don't even speak proper English. And they're performing unlicensed electrical work on, what they've identified were 2 of Queensland's major solar projects. Because they really love solar projects in Queensland. They even had that one that they completely closed down. Remember that one a few years ago? That was great.
I still remember TDS's takedown of that Michael Moore's friend documentary. It was like, they made the joke as like, we've gotten very efficient at destroying solar plants.
Yeah, well, I remember the excuse that they gave with that one was cloud coverage. They weren't getting enough solar because of the clouds. It's like, what? That wasn't a variable you took into account at the beginning? You did not know the clouds existed?
Apparently not.
So what we're going to see here, I guess, what the ETU is saying is that we're going to start seeing more young people dying on these solar projects because of a lack of training and because of unscrupulous employers hiring people without the requisite skills and qualifications. Yes, I'm going to definitely go and agree with the ETU there as well. But I'm also going to say that you're going to see this across the board. All right. It's probably, this case is probably a little bit more egregious because the governments of the state and the federal level are just trying to aggressively push green energy projects and rush them through so that we can, get close to all of these ridiculous emission reduction targets. But it's happening across the entire country, all right, because we're importing third worlders all the time who don't care about basic safety standards. And, we've already seen an increase in industrial accidents happening here. So, unfortunately, yeah, this is going to cost more lives in these solar projects, but it's going to cost more lives across the entire country, I think.
Oh, don't worry. We're going to build more of them.
All right, so
you see that battery they rolled out, and they were so proud about it because it was one of the biggest batteries in the country, bar like one, which is slightly bigger. They're like, oh yes,
Elon Musk battery.
I think this was a Chinese company that actually did it. Okay. So it wasn't. I believe Elon Musk battery is like the biggest, or projected to be the biggest, depending on its level of construction at this point. But one of the this battery they were posting, they're like, "Oh yes, under like ideal conditions in the middle of summer, this can supply 5 hours of power to the local fucking 3 postcodes."
And that's it.
That's it. 250 kilowatt hours.
Well,
The average house uses about 20.
Look forward to all of those blackouts, that South Africa go through.
Load shedding. We've already seen it.
Yeah. It'll not just be to do with all this green energy, though. It'll be to do with incompetent workers, too. Just general incompetence and incapability. Okay, so fuel efficiency standards. So this is in terms of a lot of different things, like how much excise tax we have on petrol and all that, and all the incentives there are to, say, switch from a fossil fuel vehicle into an electric vehicle, all of that kind of stuff. Well, what a surprise that we're told that these changes to those standards are going to result in higher costs for tradies, and that in turn will affect housing supply and affordability in our economy. No surprise there. Now, these include things like new emissions standards, which would increase the prices of utes and four-wheel drives and SUVs in particular. I've noticed we have been using the term SUV much more in Australia. That used to just be an American term. But yeah, Chris Bowen, who of course has the portfolio for climate change and energy, he has even hinted at the big gas guzzlers, like, your big Ford Ranger and Toyota Hilux, etc., actually being illegal. You just wouldn't be able to buy one at all in a few years' time. So, they would ban, say, the new sales of them, and then you would only have the secondhand market that would eventually die out at some point. We've had very, very strong indications that they could be headed in that direction. And that's something that the Greens do support, by the way, is just outright bans on, like big four-wheel drives. I will say, though, not because I'm concerned with emissions or anything, but if you don't need a four-wheel drive, as in, like, you don't often go on country roads, and you're not like an outdoorsy person who goes out fishing and, kind of needs to go off the track.
Or if you're not hauling heavy equipment all the fucking time.
Or you don't have, like, or if you're not a tradie and you don't need to move a lot of stuff, like, don't buy one. Like, I just don't see the point. Because, like, what annoys me the most about them is when you guys pull up to a T-junction and you don't hang back a bit, I can't see past you in my little sedan. I can't see incoming traffic. It's really
get mogged on small car.
And the more and more of your cars that are out there, the more and more that happens. And, it's fine for you because you've got such a big vehicle. If you're in a crash or whatever, you're actually pretty well protected. I'm not. In fact, it's worse for me because it's a big car going into a small car. So,
someone please make the Finian soy jack riding his sedan.
What? You've never found that annoying?
Oh no, dude! My first car was a Ford Focus. Like, I fucking know what you're talking about. It's an absolute pain in the ass. My own dad even did it to me once. I was like, "You fucking bastard!"
Most drivers are actually pretty good, I will say. Most of them understand that you shouldn't pull right up to the white line so that you can afford the sedan driver that little bit of room so he can see past. That's good, but a lot of people don't either. But also, it is true that they are gas guzzlers, all right? So that's why Chris Bowen and the Greens don't like them. But that's bad for your bottom line, isn't it? Because you have to spend more money on petrol. And you're doing it for no reason, really. You're just doing it just for the sake of having a big car.
Yeah, a car, like many things, is a tool. And just like all tools, from a lathe to a hammer, you really have to consider the return on your investment.
Yeah. So if you don't need one, why are you spending all of this extra money on this big, giant car? You know, you're not going bush. You're not a tradie. You have no need for it. You just need a regular car, and it'll cost you a lot less money to both to buy and for fuel as well. Like, just overall, you will save a heap of money. Anyway, I don't want to see Chris Bowen telling you, though, that you just can't buy one.
No.
What I'm offering you is just a little bit of advice right here. But anyway, the whole point of these new fuel efficiency standards is, of course, to discourage people from, first of all, buying those giant cars, but second of all, simply just buying any car that takes petrol. They just want you to switch over to an electric vehicle. And that's, exactly the type of thing that Chris Bowen wants, is he wants to see everyone fucking driving electric cars.
I want to see more lithium fires.
So just on that blackout that happened in Victoria last week, which was around about 530,000 people who experienced a blackout, and it was actually like for a good few hours as well. So it was, serious enough. Well, rest assured, the government has you in very safe hands, because there's going to be an independent expert panel that is going to have an inquiry. And this will be chaired by experts who will get back to you. Now, I actually completely agree with the Liberal Party here. They're saying that this is just like for show, and that it's a sham, and it isn't actually going to lead anywhere. Yeah, but you know what? That's like 99% of government inquiries. Like with most government inquiries, they already know what the problem is. They just don't want to fix it. And to make it look like they're actually doing something about it, you just spend money on an inquiry that leads absolutely nowhere. In this case, I mean, we went through it last week.
The police investigating themselves.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, you had 6 transmission lines that were taken out during a storm, and previous reports said that those transmission lines were not built for purpose, and that basically a better design and a more expensive design was needed to make sure that those transmission lines could withstand the elements. That was it, really. That's all it was. You don't need an inquiry. It was just you should have built bigger and more expensive transmission lines. That was essentially
You should have had switching stations that were able to carry over current from the central Victorian region into Geelong. That's it. That would have been like it would have been like a maybe a couple $100 million investment to do that. But it would have been there, and you would have been able to switch power supplies over. Yes, it would have been less efficient.
The transmission lines are
maybe.
out.
Yeah. Again, there should have been a level of redundancy. There wasn't that level of redundancy because, again, and I looked further into this. Geelong, specifically West Geelong, is one of those areas that are like now doing the fucking dumb, like, oh, we're using capacitive network options. Like, why are you using capacitive network options? Oh, it's because we're using capacitive network options for a diversity of technologies.
All right. Okay, now here's actually one environment story that I don't know if we've really talked about this before, but clothing. We've certainly talked about how clothing is moving from China into India and Bangladesh. Just check the tags of the cheap clothes that you're buying from Target or whatever. You'll notice it's always India and Bangladesh. But our Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, is actually threatening to more heavily regulate this sector and even put in a levy on clothing, on what is referred to as fast fashion. So just to give you an idea of what this means, what fast fashion means, I'll just read these stats here. These are interesting. Australians on average are now purchasing 56 items of clothing each year. On average, that is.
Who the fuck are these people?
I know. And more than 200,000 tons of clothing is being sent to Australian landfills. Okay, yeah, now, whoa, 56 items of clothing a year on average? Who the hell?
Yesterday, I wore a shirt that was restitched by my mother 5 times.
Yeah, I mean, I've got t-shirts that are 5 years old. It's just like, if it's not coming undone, I'll just keep
It's
wearing
gay
it.
men, isn't it? It's gay men. I mean,
Well, it's
Jesus
also,
Christ,
look,
Finian. When was the last time you saw me in a t-shirt that didn't have one hole in it at some point along along the entire thing? Or when did you see me in pants that weren't completely and utterly fucked?
I used to be really shocking with this. Like, I would, even when I had holes in my t-shirts, I would keep wearing them. I'm like slightly more sophisticated these
I
days.
learned like
Slightly,
a
slightly.
yeah, I learned like a fucking seam stitch now, so I just get like a needle and just fucking do it
I don't have a
myself.
clue. I do not have a fucking clue how to do that.
I had to stitch together some composite materials before setting them in resin, so I had to learn this. I'm not
Okay.
gay, guys. Trust me. Only on Tuesdays.
Well, anyway, look,
Um, but yeah,
clothing.
no, like fuck me.
Clothing is actually, they say, the fourth most polluting industry in the world, and they're
I can
blaming it
believe that.
for, well, they blame it for between 4 and 8% of global emissions. And I guess the main thing that they would be measuring there would be the landfills, because yeah, as I say, Australians are producing about 200,000 tons of clothes that go to landfills every year.
Just burn
Um,
them.
well, one interesting fact I like about landfills that I learned about Penn and Teller is, and this goes to what you were just discussing about methane before, is that landfills actually produce a lot of methane. And in fact, that methane can be harnessed to use as power. You can do that. They do it in America.
Yeah,
You can
it's
actually use landfills to good effect.
it's propane and butane's little brother. That's what it is. It's literally the same fucking. It's the same fucking carbon structure, just a bit smaller. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Methane, ethane, propane, butane. I can't remember number four, but yeah, no, they're all in the same family of alkanes. The most simple organic molecule.
Okay. Yeah. So, like, landfills can actually be uh, good for the environment if you think about it in that way, because you can actually harness energy
Wait, butane's
from.
number four.
What's that?
That's why I forgot. Butane is number four. It's pentane after that. There we go.
Okay. Um, So anyway, this is, yeah, it's an increasing problem in Australia because our love of what's called fast fashion, in other words, just buying a lot of clothes and then throwing them out after not too long, is filling up landfills. And Tanya Plibersek is considering a levy on clothing manufacturers as a result of doing that, of basically making all the cheap shit a little bit more expensive to deter people from buying so much. Now, this obviously has to do with, what else could we call it? Neoliberal culture, where it's all just
Yeah.
about your worth is about how much you spend. And part of that is just how you
Do you
present
have
yourself
a
to
always
others.
was, always will be t-shirt, which you've gotten rid of already?
Well, yeah, yeah, and you've ordered a new one. Um, but yeah, it's just to do with a mass consumer culture where it's just buy product, dispose of product, look forward to new product that you're buying tomorrow. And I just look at this as a sad reflection of culture, actually. And well, you said it's to do with gay men. Yeah, it's to do with gay men, but it's also to do with all the fucking browns that we're importing. I mean, think of how materialistic black people are, as
Oh
in
yeah.
African blacks. They are extremely pessimistic. And once they
You know
do
what?
actually come across a bit of money, they spend it on kind of like frivolous signaling items like expensive clothing.
And by the way, for the left listening, black spending their money on frivolities is actually a quote from Che Guevara.
He
If you
actually.
don't believe me, look
Yeah.
it up.
Oh yeah, no, he said that homosexuals should be put in concentration camps. Um, he actually said a lot of things that most lefties would cringe at. I'm still not a fan of the man, of course.
Oh no.
So yeah, we might actually be having to put a levy on these, overly cheap, shitty pieces of clothes. I would just say, like, try to actually buy Australian made when you can, if you do have to spend that little bit extra. Because God knows we do not need to be sending more and more of our money to India and Bangladesh and Pakistan. While at the same time we absorb all of their people.
We need to go through our cadre of men over here and find the fruitiest one over here and make our own brand and see if we can get some high quality t-shirts and apparel launched over here.
Okay, all right. We'll get on to the economy.
Shit, it's going to be me, isn't it?
So the economy and cost of living.
Yeah.
So, the unions, the ACTU, Australian Council of Trade Unions, they're pushing the government to name and shame businesses that price gouge, that overcharge consumers. So they want this to be done through the competition watchdog, which is the ACCC. They've also they've produced a report that gives 35 recommendations altogether, actually. But yeah, the one that really caught the headlines was price gouging. And we know that the Woolworths CEO resigned. Did you see that?
Yes.
So
I saw also the disastrous fucking ABC interview.
Yeah. That was that as well. Really didn't look good. So
I haven't seen a South African, fucking die faster unless it was a video from a fucking farm in the Orange County over there.
I did notice the South African accent, yeah. So, this wasn't all just to do with the Australia Day stuff. That did cause a stir, and I'm glad that it did. In fact, I was actually kind of surprised at how big that story ended up being. So it's good to know people still have that kind of fiery passion, and they can claim scalps when they can. But, it was also to do with the allegations against both Woolworths and Coles, that despite the fact they are still showing record profits, they seem to be just taking in more and more money all the time. This is not reflected in lower prices. In fact, a lot of the price rises that we have seen have been far exceeding the current inflation rates. So, from my own experience, I'm finding it with groceries, fruit and veg and meat, yes, mainly. I'm just noticing those prices go up all the time, they're essential items. And, my rant as well is the same level of increase is not seen on junk food, but it is on healthy food, which is a terrible incentive put into the system.
I would say go to a farmer's market, but even in Western Australia, the options for farmers markets that are available to the general public are kind of shit. But the reason, and again, the reason why you're not seeing it on fast food is because the actual cost of production didn't go up all that much. Yeah, it did spike during fucking COVID when, the agricultural industry couldn't get its brown slaves for a hot bit, or at least not at the same rate that they were before. But fast food, the fast food industry, when McDonald's said they source all their stuff and etc. Yeah, it's because they make deals directly with the farmers, or at least a United Farmers distributor. That's how they actually get the cheapest price. There's as little as possible middlemen between, what McDonald's, what Hungry Jack's, that's Burger King for the US audience, and what KFC serves, and the baseline producer. That's for the sake of profit. Now, a grocery store to you is literally just another middleman, and it only exists out of convenience.
Yeah, that's all it is. And yeah, people do keep telling me to go to the farmers markets. I really should. I'm just resisting.
They're meh. They're meh here.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you actually wanted to go to a farmer's market in West Australia, you would have to go to Brunswick Junction or some shit, and you're not doing that for a grocery shop, are you?
No, I don't think so.
I get Spud Shed's okay. The Galatis are known to us, known to me at least. They're okay. Farmer Jack's is but outside of those two options, especially in Australia, you're not going to get too much.
Probably not. But look, what do you think of these ideas here? So, like, as I said, one of the recommendations was naming and shaming people who engage in price gouging. But they also said, like, making it a criminal offence to charge excessive prices.
Yes.
You reckon all those things would be good?
Dude, we're in a state of fucking like actual. We're in a state of collapse where we're seeing base goods be targeted. It is a criminal offense to price gouge during a natural disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, like if you
Well,
charge for
congratulations, we're in a
water or something.
civilization disaster.
Yeah,
Yeah, fuck
yeah,
it.
we are.
Criminal.
Oh man. Okay. So the GST. This is what all the other states hate us for here in WA because we apparently get too much. We pay more GST by far than any other state.
We don't even get, and when people say like, oh, you know, Western Australia is a small state, it's like we actually are still not even getting really proportionate to our population of Australia.
We still actually give up more GST money than we take in. Okay,
yes.
It's something like we get, I don't know, 70 cents in the dollar or something, whereas in Tasmania they get like $1.50 out of the dollar. You know, they get more. But anyway, Albanese did this weird kind of stunt the other day where he went and wrote the words "No change to WA GST" on a journalist's arm in big writing, just so that he could make it very clear that this is an ironclad promise not to actually mess around with the current arrangements. Those arrangements
that is very odd.
That's a weird thing to do. He also said that he would take him to a tattoo parlor to have it inked permanently. That's a weird way to make a promise, but anyway. So, I mean, I guess...
Are you sure his girlfriend's not a beard?
I don't know. So, I mean, I guess from now on, if we really want to know if Albo is telling the truth and really is committed to a promise that he's made, we'll just ask if he can write it on our arm.
Yeah, to show up, you know, get a cast put on and show up with a cast or something to his next event.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just because like this issue just keeps being brought up again and again, and the other states just, whether they're Labor or Liberal, remember they're all Labor now except for Tasmania, they're always complaining about it, saying that we're getting too much. So I guess a tiny bit of good news there. Oh yeah, so I didn't know this, but apparently our superannuation industry is worth $3.5 trillion. That's how much we've got stashed away there, which is actually something like 3 times the amount of like freely circulating money in the Australian economy. So wow, it is huge, yeah. Absolutely huge. But anyway, they're worried that like the government is going after them with more reforms. And that can be to do with things like changing how much you tax super contributions over a certain amount, and also tax certain accounts that have exceeded a certain amount of superannuation. It also can be, well, what some of these superannuation bodies have been saying is that the federal government might force people into default retirement products. I guess that's sort of a way of rationing the superannuation instead of kind of deciding for yourself how exactly that money is going to be paid out to you over your retirement. So the government is, you know, kind of rightly worried that some people will just kind of piss their money up and then have to go in the pension later on. So I actually don't really see that in and of itself, a so-called default retirement product, being such a bad thing. Because, I mean, if all these people cleaned out their superannuation funds during COVID, as they were allowed to do, that clearly shows that there is some irresponsibility at play here, and the government does need to regulate it to an extent. Because remember, it's a government-run program, and yes, okay, it is your money, but it is your money that was created through a superannuation scheme that collects compulsory contributions from your employer. It's a government program at the end of the day designed to create a nest egg for you in retirement. So it's fair enough that the government should have some say in terms of how that ends up being distributed to you when you do finally retire. So, yeah, I don't know if they should be so much worried about that. People who run these superannuation funds are obviously much more interested in the bottom line, just how much money they're going to get out of it. But dare I say, you wouldn't even have a super industry, really, if the government didn't heavily regulate it. So,
oh, fuck no.
No way.
Fuck no.
So I don't see that as such a bad thing. Okay. So on to housing. Here's some more stats for you. The price gap between apartments and houses has widened by 45% since March of 2020 and January of 2024. So 4 years. That's pretty big gap that we've got here. So they're blaming that, of course, on rising land values, scarcity of houses, and also a desire for more space. So that shows, right, that this switch into urban living, instead of building out, we build up, is not democratic. It's not something that people want. People do actually want to move into a house where they have a backyard and where they only have 2 or 3 sets of neighbors. That is actually what they want. But now, given this widening gap between the price of houses and the price of apartments, more and more people are simply giving up on that aspiration of owning and living in a house and simply just moving into an apartment for the simple reason that they can afford the apartment, but they can't afford the house. So, yeah, dare I get
an increasing reality today.
Yeah, so what this shows is that no, people do want houses. They do. It's just that they're fucking unaffordable. And this is what has been fueling the recent uptick in urban living, is people just don't have the money. It's not that they want urban living. It's not that they want to move into a shoebox. It's they simply can't afford not to.
That's it. I'm shopping around for a new place at this point, and the most affordable ones are between 500 and 700,000 Australian dollars. That's affordable. And when I mean affordable, I mean I'd probably get killed if I lived there, but
yeah. So look, the economists now, if you read this report, are saying that this is simply just going to result in more and more apartments being purchased in the coming years. Although they are still warning at the same time, we don't even have a good enough supply of apartments at the moment. But we do have a hell of a lot more of them than we do houses. So, maybe not exactly that, but, we've got enough now for the divide, the gap between apartment and housing prices being that large. Okay. So last story on housing. Albo is flagging a potential crackdown on tax breaks being claimed by landlords that use Airbnb. These are homeowners that offer short-term accommodation, and they then go and claim tax deductions because they've been running it as a form of accommodation. But then it's pointed out that a lot of these properties that they have are actually just being left empty for months at a time. So every now and then, they have they'd run it as an Airbnb and they have people paying for accommodation there. But then for much of the rest of the year, it sits there and no one's in it. It's just empty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess in this sort of a market, I don't really like the idea of that either. Like, kind of housing space going to waste when we've got so many people, crying out for rentals, crying out for an affordable house to put a mortgage on. Um, but again, like this is just a band aid solution. It's like, okay, you're tinkering with the tax code a little bit just to stop some of these like boomers who have multiple properties from making their tax bill a little bit smaller each year. It's like, is that really going to solve anything? It is a tiny, tiny difference it would make at most.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's a disturbing reality we live in.
All right, so this story, the Australian absolutely loved this story, although other
Oh
networks didn't
god.
tend to be talking about this all that much. And that is, we had, I guess what you could say was a pretty serious privacy breach for what was around 400 services companies or consultancy companies. So, places like Deloitte and KPMG, those kind of places,
Uh,
consultancy companies where most people don't have any fucking clue what it is they do. They know they make a lot of money. They made a shitload of money for their services, but no one really understands what the hell these services companies do. Um, anyway, the Department of Finance, which of course is in the remit of Katie Gallagher, the finance minister, they sent out like an email, like in bulk, to all of these companies. And within that email, there was an embedded spreadsheet. And within that spreadsheet contained the financial details, such as the very specific prices of services that these service companies offer. And so that meant a lot of these service fees, by the way, were secret. Okay, they're only kind of given out to consumers when a deal is being negotiated, but they keep it secret because, well, they don't want their
the
competitors
rest of their
to know.
clientele, yes,
That's
their
it.
competitors.
Yeah. So the issue here was actually not really that like the big services companies like Deloitte had their information leaked. They don't really care because they already own enough of that market to be dominant. It was more the concern of the smaller companies having their service fees leaked to the bigger companies because they have the power to do, what you call predatory pricing, which is just temporarily lowering prices to put a competitor out of business. And then
Yep.
once they go out of business, you put the prices back up again. So that's what they're saying may have happened. Now, this part you do have to kind of laugh at. Once they realized the glitch here, the fact that they had accidentally attached this spreadsheet to the email, they then went and frantically emailed all of the companies and said, "Can you please delete that last email we sent you?"
Oh,
To which
Jesus.
they probably laughed and said, "No." But also, we must have missed this because I don't remember covering it. But the Department of Health actually did a very similar thing at the end of last year. I think it was November, where they had like an embedded spreadsheet that they didn't know it was there, and confidential information got leaked.
Oh no, we
So
did cover that.
we did. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it basically had like I was like, oh god, guys with grids most affected because it leaked a whole bunch of confidential health information about certain
Oh,
patients and
yeah, of course. Yes. No, we did. Now that you, now that you mentioned that part of it, yeah. No, I do remember it. So yeah, I mean, this is, I guess you could say, the second major data breach that the government's been involved in only 4 months. So some people have actually been calling for Katie Gallagher to resign. They're doing that a bit at the moment. They're all calling for Andrew Giles to resign as well. Um, but yeah, all I'd put this down to is just kind of bureaucratic incompetence. I wouldn't say that this
yeah,
is anything to
it's
do
not.
with the
It
Labor
doesn't
Party.
sound malicious. It just sounds like a whole bunch of retards.
Yeah, yeah. People aren't taking the proper precautions when it comes to actually sending out bulk emails.
It's like everyone's fear when they send an email to their boss and they have to double check the attachments to the email just because even though you've never recorded yourself dancing naked in your bathroom, you don't know if you've accidentally attached that video and sent it to your boss.
Yeah, or you might have a screen cap of your horse porn or something like that. You've accidentally
Yeah,
leaked.
there we go. But don't worry, guys, it was just goblins.
Jeez. Okay, so let's go to the States. And of course, we do have an election coming up in only a month's time. So Tasmania will be going to the polls a year early, 23rd of March. So just to give you an idea of some of the things that are going on, the ABC, if you do want to have a look at like some of the promises that are being made so far, that's all spelled out for you at the ABC. So we'll just go through a couple of them here. So Labor says that they will cut connection and disconnection fees. And that is when you like move into a new house and have a new service provided, that kind of thing. You go from one gas company into another. And that would actually cost Tas Networks, which is the government body here, $4 million a year. So you can see that they're really getting into basic cost of living policies here. How much is your power costing? How much are your connection fees? And all that kind of stuff, which is not surprising. The election's only a month out. And this is what people care about. They don't care about the voices to Parliament and stuff like that, They want to know actually how much bang for their buck they're going to get. So on the other hand, you've got the Liberal Party, and they're promising to increase the rights of tenants. So how about that? The Greens aren't the only ones looking out for the rights of renters at the moment. Even the Liberals are trying to get in on this as well. So one of their policies is to make it that the right of landlords to automatically reject a rental application on the basis that the applicant has pets would be taken away from them. You would not be able to automatically reject them. Although there would be nothing stopping you from simply picking someone who doesn't have pets and then simply not mentioning that pets was a factor in your decision. So I don't know if that would really have any practical effect at the end of the day. You think it would?
It's not going to. I'll put it that way. It's not going to. We're in oversaturation right now, so that means proving discrimination on any basis is going to be next to actually fucking impossible.
Yeah.
And dude, also I'm tearing up carpets in a place that had cats in it, and I thought I was being responsible with the cats, but holy fucking Christ, there's a lot of cat piss, and that is a good fucking $6,000 down the drain.
Yeah, but we're probably talking crazy cat levels here. Like, how many do they have?
2.
Oh, was that all? Oh, okay. Shit, that's a lot of fucking destruction.
Oh, yeah, no, dude, fucking cats mystery piss, man. Yeah, dude,
thankfully.
You only actually smell it when it's actually got through the submat and etc. But if you look at the submat of carpet, holy fucking shit, you can see every single cat piss spot.
Jeez. Okay, I'll take your word for it. My cat always pisses outside, so thankfully I don't have to.
Well, that's because it's a wild creature. It looks like Satan.
That might be it. But she's an outdoor cat, so she goes to the toilet outside.
But yeah, no, again, pets in general, they just cause general damage. Again, that's what a security bond is there for. But yeah, I can understand why landlords wouldn't want to fucking deal with that.
Yeah, because I mean, if you've got pets, they always make you pay an additional bond on top of it. They make you pay pet bonds too. So yeah, I mean that should kind of be enough, I think. But also, now that the all the candidates, I believe, for Labor and Liberal have been decided. I mean, it's only a month away, so that's not surprising. So 35 candidates we have for the Liberals, and among them we find is, oh no, a climate change denier, and another who was opposed to the vaccine mandates. So this is Labor
God,
trying.
I bet he believes in Q as well.
Yeah, so they're trying to say that, oh, the Liberal Party in Tasmania is the schizo right, and the schizo right is a real thing. Don't get me wrong about it. But, the idea that they are some sort of huge threat is laughable, I think. I just find that, like, my issue with people in the schizo right is that they're focusing their energy in, like, all the wrong places, like, and sometimes know that they are focusing energy in the right places, but, like, when it comes to, say, the racial question, they are channeling none of their energy over there. They exclusively focus on things like climate change and vaccines. And it's like, guys, there's really other pressing issues that we should be focusing on here. I don't know why he's so obsessed about all these other things. Like, especially now talking about COVID lockdowns and everything, it's over. It is over. That was a temporary issue. It's gone. Forget about it. Please start talking about immigration again. That's my issue with the schizo.
Let's get back to rhetorically beating their skulls in with facts and logic.
Yes. Let's get back onto what actually matters. Okay. So in WA, our Attorney General is finally quitting. That's John Quigley. John Quigley looks like an anorexic version of the Thing from Fantastic Four, if you have a look at him. He's 75 years old now, so he is bowing out of politics, I would say, later. Did you just Google him?
Yep.
So you can see, I believe my description is accurate.
Yes, it is apt. He looks like the Thing if he got like a HIV diagnosis.
Yeah, he got a stomach staple or something.
Oh, Jesus.
But he is actually, like, fairly well known here because he has served in multiple Labor governments. He's a real Labor Party veteran, you could say. But he's also well known because he was a truck driver, and then, like, in his 30s or 40s, I think, he went back to university. Oh, sorry, he just went to university for the first time as a mature age student, and he became a lawyer. And then he became, like, the kind of star lawyer for the police union, the WA police union. Then the police union disowned him because he went and represented Andrew Mallard. Again, probably only people in WA may know who Andrew Mallard is. He was a guy who was wrongly convicted of murder. And John Quigley went and represented him, free of charge, I believe. And the police union hated him because that was sort of seen as a betrayal. They believed they had made the correct arrests and filed the right charges and presented the evidence that Andrew Mallard had committed this murder. And then by John Quigley coming in and taking up the case, they saw that as a middle finger being pointed at them, saying, no, you guys got it all wrong. But in the end, he got Mallard off, actually. And it is, pretty, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on this, but there is a broad consensus, let's say, in the legal community that Andrew Mallard was innocent and spent many years wrongly behind bars. So, if I will congratulate John Quigley on one thing, it's that he got a innocent man out of jail. What is really sad about that story, though, is that Andrew Mallard, he got like a compensation payout, as you would, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe. And he actually moved to America, and then he got hit by a car. Like
God fucking damn it.
Yeah. Like, things were actually back on track for him. He was doing well in life. He had a reason to live, and then boom, it was just, wow. It's hard to believe he can get that much bad luck in life. Like,
God really sent his drunkest driver after him, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't know the circumstances about it, but yeah, it would not surprise me if it was a drunk beaner that did it. In fact,
That is America.
I
That
would
is
put my money
America.
on that it was. If I were to put a bet on it, I'd say that's probably what it was. Tragically, yeah.
The only time I've ever been into like an automotive like incident in America was once in Pennsylvania, and the fucking dude pulled over, and then fucking like Jose Gonzalez Rodriguez stumbles out, and then fucking vomits, and is like smelling like tequila, and says, "I ain't got no insurance. I ain't got no insurance." And I was just like, "Holy fucking shit!"
So he was like shit faced at the time.
Yes.
Basically, I mean, he's throwing up. He must have been. Oh man.
He smelled like bad
Yep.
tequila.
Well, I do remember. I don't think there's such a big thing anymore. But do you remember those retarded videos people would post of themselves like sculling entire bottles of spirits? In like 30 seconds or whatever.
Oh,
You can still
Jesus.
watch it. They're still on YouTube, and like some of them kind of bit of karma, like they would die as a result, because that can kill you if you skull like an entire.
Poisoning is a fucking thing.
Yeah, but what I did notice, because I did see a few of them, so many of them were Mexicans or mestizos, like with fucking face tattoos and all that shit. So many of the ones who were doing it had that shit. Like,
I recently got showed something on like Maldrick's stream. Go check out Maldrick at Dead Internet Society. But there was this video where this Mexican dude like did like 50 shots of tequila at one time, and then the dude's dead. The dude is like he's not just like epileptic coma, passed out. The dude is dead. He's completely limp. And he's got no response from his eyes. It's like that is a dead man you were carrying out of the bar.
did they know that though?
I don't think they did, considering they just dumped him on the curb and called the paramedics.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, man. Oh, again, this stuff actually I shouldn't laugh at. I really shouldn't. All right. Yes. So, small update on Moira Deeming and the defamation case she's got going against John Pizzuto. Last week we went after, if I could get it right here, we spelled out the people who are funding John Pizzuto. So this week we've got a little bit of information on who's actually funding Moira Deeming instead. So it says a prominent Indigenous leader, long-standing Liberal donors, and also the wife of Clive Palmer will be funding Moira Deeming's case here. Now, I think I made a mistake last week. I said that John Pizzuto's legal bills look like it would run around $1 million. Well, actually, no, they're saying millions in this article for both John Pizzuto and for Moira Deeming. Their legal bills are actually only in the single digits, but it's going to be well over $1 million. The Liberal Party is not funding any of this, so therefore they have to go for private donors. Ex-premiers are putting their hands in their pocket for John Pizzuto, and a raft of other people are handing over money to Moira Deeming. Now, as it stands at the moment, if you donate $600 or more, you cannot do so anonymously. So that's part of the reason why we've got some information on these names of people who are funding it. So I'll just go through. I should have put this in my prep, so I'm just going through the article at the moment. Warren Mundine, he's the famous Indigenous leader who is. We don't know the exact amount. They've just said that he has donated over $600. Okay, simply because he is named here, he's not anonymous. We know he must have donated over $600. So yeah, this has also just brought up the debate again as to exactly who should be able to stay anonymous and who shouldn't when it comes to political donations, because sometimes it can also have the effect of discouraging people from donating when they otherwise would have, because they don't want it to be public. They don't want a song and dance being made about it.
If you're a regular dude and you're not some kind of fanatic, are you donating more than $600 these days?
Oh, look, I don't know. I mean, look, they must be donating a lot, though, because as I said, it's in the millions of dollars. It's going to cost both of them. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot. So, okay, the other ones were Hunter Valley property developer and liberal donor Hilton Grugan. I think is how you say that. As I mentioned, Clive Palmer's wife, that's Anna Palmer, and former Shark Tank judge, Steve Baxter. What is Shark Tank? Is that a reality show?
Shark Tank is where you go and pitch ideas to like esteemed businessmen. Mark Cuban's
yes,
one,
no,
yeah.
fucking God, yeah, that I don't think I've seen.
It's when it's the kind of show that some dude should just get on and ask Mark Cuban why he changed his name to hide his Jewish background and didn't call himself Mark Israeli.
Yeah, look, this one
in relation to a recent Twitter fucking spin out. Boy, do I love the effects of the DNST3 gene. For the audience, that is Delta, November, Sierra, Tango, 3 gene. Go and look it up.
Okay. Anyway, I am really looking forward to this happening. I don't think it's happening till September, if I remember the date correctly. You know, other people get excited for Taylor Swift concerts. I get excited for defamation cases brought by politicians. All right. Some quick stories here. We don't have much left for you. The Federal Liberal Party, the seat of Moore, which is technically a suburban seat, although it definitely does reach into regional Australia when you've got that spot just sort of north of the northern suburbs of Perth. The MP there was this guy called Ian Goodenough. So, of course, people were running the headline, not good enough. Fucking stupid. Ian Goodenough is this guy who he's an Asian. I think he's of Chinese Malaysian background, I believe.
Looks like it.
He's got like a permanent like smile fixed on his face, and he's got the most bizarre voice you'll ever hear. Like, he's got an Australian accent, but he has this weird sort of like ASMR like voice, or like he's putting on a voice to read you a bedtime story or something. It's so, just Google him if you want to know what I mean by that. It's a really, really bizarre voice that he has. But anyway, he's lost his pre-selection. So he had actually secured the endorsement from Peter Dutton and other high-profile Liberals, but the WA branch of the Federal Liberal Party has voted him out, so he's lost his pre-selection. And I mean, it's rare enough that politicians who are not retiring have their pre-selection challenged. And usually, even if you do survive it, it's a bad look. You know, it's a bad look when you go to the polls later on, when people know that your own party tried to take you out. So yeah, he's lost that to Vince Connolly, who I don't know that much about, so I won't continue much more with that.
He's a no-name. Didn't even barely fucking politically advertise, to be honest.
He used to be the member for Stirling, though, so he's sort of known. Okay, so the other story for the Federal Libs was that there seems to be a move in the New South Wales branch to have Alex Hawke expelled. So Alex Hawke is he was very often seen as like the key factional warlord for the centre faction of the Liberal Party. If you were to divide the factions into three, the hard right, that say would be represented by Tony Abbott, the left, which would be the likes of like Malcolm Turnbull, and then the centre, that would be Scott Morrison, Alex Hawke, etc. And that's why, you know, when we got Scott Morrison put in place when Malcolm Turnbull was taken out, we were told that Scott Morrison was sort of the compromise position. You know, he didn't represent Turnbull's side, but he didn't represent Peter Dutton's side either. He represented a kind of a middle way. And Alex Hawke is seen to be that leader of that faction. And so he, of course, made enemies during, the time where Morrison sort of flexed his way into the prime ministership. But he also made enemies when both he and Scott Morrison actually intervened in the pre-selection process in New South Wales in the lead up to the last federal election. One of the enemies he made was, oh God, what's his name? It's this Italian, Matthew Camanzulli. So Camanzulli was the hard right factional player in the New South Wales.
Does that come with a side of a lemon and a water dish?
He doesn't actually look that Italian either. If you look at the guy, he's not that woggy looking. I'm sorry, it's been a long day at work. I'm a bit tired.
Tired field team.
Yeah. So anyway, they're all going after Alex Hawke now, getting a bit of post-election revenge out of him. And I don't know. I wouldn't care one way or the other if they get him or not. Okay. All right. So there's a debate going on now in Parliament as to whether or not alcohol should be banned, like just full stop. There is a bar in Parliament. Some members are known to access it when there is, votes being called late into the evening. That does sometimes happen. And, they just have to kind of get back into the Parliament when the division is called to cast their vote. Quite famously, Tony Abbott missed one of those when he got drunk in, I think, Christopher Pyne's office drinking wine. But, of course, the reason why we're talking about this now is because, well, what happened to Barnaby Joyce? It must be pointed out that he wasn't in Parliament at the time. He was actually in the entertainment
on the
district.
street.
So, yeah, on the street.
His back to the pavement.
Yes. But also the deputy
prescription
leader,
drugs, apparently.
Well, that's what he says, yeah, a mix of alcohol and prescription drugs. But also during a Senate estimates hearing, you had Perrin Davey, who is the deputy leader of the Nationals. She had slurred speech, and she did admit that prior to that hearing that she had 2 glasses of red wine. Now, most people would say, well, you can't really get pissed off 2 glasses of red wine, can you? So,
unless you're a very, very small-framed woman.
I guess so. I mean, she's a woman. I don't know if she's small-framed or not. I'd have to get a better look at her. But she was saying that slurred speech was not caused by the wine at all. She said it was to do with a medical condition that she's had through dealing with multiple surgeries to do with, and you might have to explain this one, Nolsey, but an abscess exploding in her throat that happened to her when she was holidaying in Germany 5 years ago. So this is to do with scar tissue that she's got in her throat. And she said sometimes that can cause speech difficulties. And so she said it was actually that when a combination of fatigue, simply being tired, that created that slurred speech in Senate estimates. So I don't know. That's what she's saying. She said it's not the wine, it's my throat.
Well, what can it do?
I don't know. I don't know the mechanics of this, so I don't know how to.
No, but your throat and your larynx and basically the vocal cord, which is like this muscle band goes through. They're all like part of a harmonic device. So if you increase the stiffness through scar tissue, then yeah, you're gonna change how that actually vibrates and resonates. And your brain is very, very used to it working in one kind of way. That's why people going through anaphylactic shock can't speak. It's not actually through the lack of being able to push wind through it. It's just because the stiffness has changed through inflammation. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, that to me did seem, I guess, more plausible than only 2 glasses of wine, because 2 glasses of wine is not much. And typically you wouldn't think it would cause big problems in your speech. So, yeah. Um,
Maybe. Good excuse if there was one.
okay. Also, the continuing debate on voluntary assisted dying. The Northern Territory is what they say they are surveying the public to see if adequate support is there to extend voluntary assisted dying to people suffering from a mental illness. Um, so, former Australian of the Year Patrick McGorry, he's a psychiatrist, and he is warning against this quite fervently, saying it's a dangerous area to bring this into, because many of the times when it comes to a particular mental illness that someone has, it's not permanent. It's something that they can overcome through, adequate therapy or just other changes in their life, I guess.
Enough
And
SSRIs
yeah,
to kill an elephant.
well, yeah, they might be on those. Maybe if they actually got off the SSRIs, then they might actually notice some improvement in their life. Who knows? Certainly, I would say if you're not exercising, do that, because it is every single bloody study shows that if you simply exercise regularly each week, that has much more of an effect, positive effect on your mood than any SSRI or any antidepressant medication that is out there, like far and away. So simply get off your ass and move around a bit is what you should be doing. But anyway, I digress there. Yeah, look, I agree with him in that, I've always said that my support for euthanasia is very dependent on it being well regulated. And so that includes not allowing these kind of exceptions, which make you fall down the slippery slope. And yeah, it's definitely like if you're in a black spot, if you're in a dark place because you're going through some bad depression or whatever it might be, that very well may put the idea in your head that everything is hopeless and there's no point in carrying on. So, I might as well just end it now. Even though, that's your brain kind of tricking you a little bit. You might just see it that way because things are bad at the moment. Doesn't mean they're going to stay that way. So, yeah, I agree. I don't want to see it going down that path.
You should always remember the little talking point that I give to myself whenever I'm feeling down. Why end it all now when you can be or continue to be a problem to others?
Okay, you could perhaps ask yourself that question, but you could also just say, you're part of nature's greatest creation. And it is a privilege to be a part of it, and you don't want to throw that away. And the way you make good on being part of that privileged group, and I'm not talking about the typical kind of white privilege that Tim Wise talks about. I mean simply just being part of the white race and being part of the greatest thing that nature's ever seen. You need to stay around and fight for it. That's what you owe your people, is you need to actually stick around and fight. Even if things are looking gloomy, and I certainly know how gloomy they look. Whenever I walk outside the bloody house, I'm instantly reminded of it. But yeah, your race needs you, to put it plainly. Okay, the last story we've got is the new Bet Stop program by the government is actually turning out to be a pretty big success. So what Bet Stop is, this is a service that you sign up to online, and then it blocks you from accessing online betting across a range of platforms. So far, there has been more than 18,000 people who have signed up for it. And of those 18,000 people, the majority of them are young. They're people under 35. So I guess that shows that, gambling is just something that just always continues. It's a culture, unfortunately, that I think is handed down a lot of the time. I mean, like at the moment, even at work, they're doing the footy tipping. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like some people say, oh, that's not
Oh, it's a
gambling, whatever, but
social thing. It's a social thing.
it is. But yeah, but it can lead other people down. There is a such thing as a gambling rabbit hole. Which is a hell of a lot more dangerous than like the right wing extremist rabbit hole on YouTube or whatever. you know, generally you start small, and then before you know it, you're betting these enormous wads of cash, and you've got 3 credit cards paying for it. Yeah, so it's a problem, and it can definitely consume people, take over their lives, and and that's why you've actually got. I don't know if they're around anymore, but remember there was a party actually called the No Pokies Party. It was led by Nick
Yes.
Xenophon, right? It's a real thing. Andrew Wilkie as well. I mean, I think he's a dick on the whole, and he's basically a greenie. But the reason, the main thing that got him into Parliament as an independent was his No Pokies platform. So, that obviously resonates with a lot of people because people know, or they've had their own lives devastated by gambling and just how consuming it can be. So, yeah. So, one of the rare occasions that I'll say this is a good government initiative that is actually doing some good. And that's why I put it at the end of the prep so that it would actually end this on a somewhat good note. So, yeah. How'd we go? Oh, look at that. We just cracked 2 hours. So I thought we might actually do an hour and a half episode today. But yeah, cool. So thank you guys. Remember the racer.biz. Thank you very much for listening to what was episode 209 of the Racers for on everything. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.